Recount podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
Dude, thank you so much for being here today, Ray. I appreciate it. One of the things I try to focus on is our actual soft professionals that are transitioning, that are getting out of the military, that are about to exit. Because at the end of the day, it's us, the people that actually live it and go through it, that can then take all that information, all those hard-earned truths, and bring it back to the regiment for the guys that are preparing to do their exit. And we had the opportunity to go through that ourselves, at least for a small period in time. And there's nothing more scary than finally realizing that, like, man, I'm meant for more. I'm meant for something else, yet this is my entire identity. So today, man, this is your entire episode. This is you. Just all about Ray Steele.
Well, man, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And you putting it like that kind of put me on the spot. And I'm like, all right, what can I say about my soft transition into the civilian workforce?
Well, let's start from the beginning, man. Like, how did Ray become a Green Beret?
Oh man, so I'm a first generation immigrant. Came here from Colombia when I was 3 years old, and I was just talking to my dad about this. And we came here practically with nothing. I was your typical kid. Grew up where parents had to work, so they left us in the house. Until we became school age. And then when I started school age, I went to school, did that. I was, believe it or not, I was actually a pretty good kid in school. And then somewhere along the lines, I fell into the wrong crowd, like we all do, started doing, other stuff. And then I struggled. Was a student athlete, basketball, football, track, you named it. I was good at it. But just due to my grades, I didn't quite see a way out of, high school. So I met with some Marine recruiters at first, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go be a Marine. That's real. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I'm gonna go be a Marine." And then I chickened out, and the reason being is I looked up. I think the Marines, they do something when they graduate called the Crucible, or something like that. That's a 2-day or whatever it is field exercise. And I was like, "Man, I don't want to do that for 2 days. I'm going to the Army." And then we ended up doing a 7-day field exercise, right? And after high school, I joined the Army. I was a young kid, trying to make something of myself. So I came in as a 92 Fox as a fueler. And I'm like, hey man, someone wants to, throw $30,000 at me right after high school, to get me to drive a truck. I'll drive a fuel truck. Hated that job. Nothing against fuelers, but it just wasn't for me. I was a student athlete, so I excelled in anything physical. But just sitting there, with a fuel truck just didn't really seem like a career I wanted to do. And my first duty.
Yeah, what time frame was that? What
this
time frame was that?
2006, 2007.
Yeah, so like that was like a big, like they were throwing so much money for fuelers, and I've met so many Green Berets or so many infantry dudes that reclassed from that job after their bonus hit.
Yep. Unlucky for me though, I had to sit in the job for about 3 years because I was stationed at NTC. That was my first duty station out in California. Many people probably been out to NTC, but if you've been there, it's definitely one of those places you don't want to go, not even for the first time. While I was stationed there, that was my first duty station, and I was there, and I want to say I think it was 7th Group that came through for a rotation, and I saw how those guys operated. And I mean, NTC, we're role players. So I had a beard, went to DLI to learn my broken, Arabic. So I thought I was cool. But man, these guys came in and took a scenario and were just badass. I mean, I've never seen a unit like perform like that. And I told myself that day, in the middle of a desert, I think it was like 2007, I want to be whatever those guys are. So I started.
Dude, that's like the greatest thing about Green Beret marketing It's not the videos, and we pump, and I shouldn't say we, the regiment pumps so much money into influencers, videos. Remember that really high speed, like moving through and like shoot him up and
Yep.
like do free falling commercials. Those are all great, and I'm sure it attracts a good portion. But the majority of guys that followed, that did what we did, it all came from an encounter like you just described. You see them doing the job, or you see them in a training mission. You're like, holy shit, I want to go do that. Like, spend more money on the guys, regiment. Spend more money on training dudes and giving them everything they need. That's your ad. Or here's a 5-second promo clip. Follow a team throughout their daily life. Just show that for like one segment on social media. Pay an influencer 30, couple grand to do a 30-minute clip with them. That's what you need, and you will get so many recruits because it works.
It worked,
you
man.
See them
It
doing
worked,
the job.
and I'll never forget the first gift SF ever gave me. I had just bought this nice, cool, cold can of Monster, and I'm sitting there in a man can out in the desert in Fort Irwin, California, and they come through, ball us up. We're hog tied, thrown in, and finally they end the scenario, and I go back to my Monster. I'm like, oh man, and there's dip in it.
That's
and they're your signature SF dip in a can. Oh, this guy doesn't need it anymore. I'm gonna put my dip in there. Yeah, and there's dip in it, man. I got a mouthful of SF dip. And that day I was like, whoever those guys are, I want that job. And that kind of started my journey. I came back, I was a young E3, so I really didn't have the rank yet. I had to be an E4. Didn't have the GT score yet, so I had to go through and do all that all over again, just to meet the standard. You know what I mean? Just to meet the standard.
Yeah, dude.
And had a great platoon leader by the name of Lieutenant Rice. He went to selection. And he came back personally because, I was the guy who was the PT stud in the company. You know what I mean? Could start, an hour behind a ruck march and still beat everybody. I was that guy. He told me, when you get ranked, you make sure you go. And I did. I listened. And I went from Fort Irwin to Marne, the Rocket of Marne, Fort Stewart, part of 3rd ID. And that's where I went to, I decided to go to selection. So I trained. Fort Stewart had a pretty good, I guess you could say SFAS prep program. And I trained with those guys from dark 30 in the morning till 1700, in the afternoon. We were still, training. And then when I got home, I would train some more, and that was kind of like my start, of my SF journey.
Yeah, dude. I think, and it's so many of us had that same sort of understanding that we're not happy where we were at. It was maybe there was great friends, it was a great platoon. I was in the same boat. I didn't feel like I was exceeding or even tapping into everything I had. You kind of reach that peak where okay, this is I'm not going to progress with the leadership that's here. I'm never going to get past this. I'm already friggin' kicking ass, but I'm never going to get past the good old boy system. There's got to be something else. I know I'm better than this. Yeah. And the only thing you can do is just fucking go to selection, or be miserable. Just sit there and just.
For me, when I was at Irwin and Fort Stewart, for me, it was here I am crushing it every day. I'm on time, right uniform, crushing it, putting my all out there. And there were people who I felt they were just allowed to just be mediocre. You know what I mean? Not push as hard, or go get that profile. Nothing against, people. If you're legitimately hurt, obviously you'll get a profile. But then I look at these E5s who don't do PT with us, but they're in charge of telling me how important PT was and how important, it was to be in shape and to do this. And I just thought, man, whatever system was that a part of the regular, it just seemed broken. It just seemed broken. Yeah. And to not I guess you could say, demean those people or those personnel in the units at Irwin and Fort Stewart. I was like, you know what? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not the right fit. Not that they're not the right fit as leaders. I'm just not the right fit for this organization. I need to go somewhere else where I am the right fit. And I think, a Green Beret, it's where it's at.
That's a great mentality to have. Like, I'm not gonna rage against machine and like try to rattle these cages, but maybe I'm just not fit for this. This is not where I belong. I have a higher calling.
I went to selection. I think at the time for me, that was back in 2008, 2009. So it was maybe 29 days, I think what it was. I can't really remember. Probably the toughest 29 days I've ever experienced in my life. And I ended up selected. Out of the 375 that we started with, only 135 were left. And I ended up being one of those who were selected. Part of that too is I felt that it was God's calling on my life also, that he wanted me to do something. And as someone who grew up in a religious home, I really struggled with that, like, thou shalt not kill stuff, So I did a lot of like self-searching and soul searching on the whole, well, God, if we're not supposed to kill, then why are there so many bad guys that need to be killed? You know what I mean? And it ended up, at least in my opinion, it ended up working out. I got selected, became an 18 Bravo. So I did 2 years of the SFQC. And it was just a remarkable journey, that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, everybody gives a lot of shit, and yeah, once you earn the title of weapons sergeant, you can bust balls. But fuck you guys.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I love being a fucking Bravo. I love being a fucking Bravo, dude. Like that gave me so much access to some of the fucking coolest schools, man. Like it gave me access to do some crazy fucking awesome shit. And hey, we've had 18 Deltas on the show. We've had 18 Echoes on it. We've talked about how great being a medic is, because it really is. But at the end of the fucking day, you want that dude that's fucking obsessed with making things bleed and explode.
I mean, if you think about it, you could put a 60 millimeter mortar, 81 millimeter mortar in front of us, and we'll get that thing up, direct lay and send round down range, before anybody could even say anything, So the ability to do that and then switch to conduct like anti-tank drills and and anti-tank weapon drills and small arms and train on all that. In my opinion, man, I think an 18 Bravo, man, holds weight on its own, man. Just remarkable.
Oh yeah,
remarkable.
It never gets enough respect. We get the 18 smash, and that's fun in games. But man, I tell you, to this day, like I was setting up just a couple weeks ago, I was setting up one of my tripods and looking at the levels, the leveling bubbles, and I immediately had a flashback of being back in the pits.
Yeah.
About to start doing small and large deflection changes. But it really is a great MOS, man. It's a great job to have on a team, and you're constantly forced. And I think it's a great thing that you're constantly forced to own your job, because the moment that you give way, other people that don't necessarily enjoy their job want to get into your lane.
Yep.
You have to own it. So if there are any young 18 Bravos out there, own your fucking craft. Know everything about tactics. Know everything about your weapon systems, route planning, and training plans. Like that's a slept on part of it, is being that assistant to the assistant, their team sergeant, when it comes to putting together those training plans, man. And it was the course though was a beast. The 18 Bravo course was not a fun experience.
No, it was not. And I remember when I graduated, man, I patted myself on the back and I was like, whoa, man, you did that. Like, holy smokes, man. That was a lot of, because you went right from light weapons to anti-tank, right to heavy weapons, and then you had the collex or the field exercise, and I remember sitting there with Doc Maloney, learning the plotting board, and how to
fun
man and how to figure. And what was crazy is I don't think I've ever saw a plotting board ever again after that.
Yeah,
because I think that we came out, or they fielded the LHMBCs. So that made
LHNBC, yeah.
everything easier, of course. But man, some of the like to think that the Bravos are the nugs, man. But when you really look at the
Yeah.
training, like man, there's a lot involved, a lot of math, you know what I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
thinking, a lot of understanding, terrain and tactics, and not only that, but for your forces, but also for the enemy and how to counter. There's a lot that goes on.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And shout out to Doc. I don't know where he's at these days. God bless that man. The entire course, my entire time going through the 18 Bravo course, the man called me Gabe. He thought my name was Gabe. We would be setting in mortars. He's like, Gabe, fire mission, Gabe. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh man.
What?
Oh, Ed Parker, Doc Maloney. I'm
Oh
trying to
yeah,
think
dude.
who the other ones were. Yeah, but man, interesting enough, after my first 5 or 6 years at 7th Group, I was on ODA 7214, my first ODA. Just so happened, remarkable team. Half of the team were brand new guys that I went through the Q course with, and the other half were the old heads who were just angry, bitter, and they were going on like their 7th deployment.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was 2nd Battalion, so they called us the War Battalion, and they were all jealous and pissed off that everybody else gets to go down South and Central America, and 2nd Battalion, here we are on the 7th trip. Well, it was my first, so I was super excited. But it's after I did my time with 7214, I actually went on to be a Bravo instructor at SWIC, and I worked alongside, Ed Parker, Doc Maloney, worked alongside those guys. So it was cool to see the other kind of side to them. And man, these are really knowledgeable and caring guys, man, who cared about the force and cared about the product that they were giving to team sergeants at group. They actually cared about it.
Oh, 100%.
Actually,
There's so much that goes into play with MOSs and the committees that a lot of people don't understand, like the interoperability too. Like, for instance, if something happens with an 18 Delta and doesn't make it through the training, a lot of times if the cadre feel that he's still a good student, still a good candidate, they'll give him the options to reclass and retrain to another MOS. 18 Echo, 18 Charlie, 18 Bravo. And those guys are able to talk amongst each other and figure out, okay, like, look, this guy is really smart. Let's kick him over. And they're constantly having to plug and play new guys into curriculum, bring him in and understand, like, hey, this dude just, right now he feels like he's, didn't do it. He's sucking right now. Get him back in the fight. Get him into a new MOS. Get him back into a new job. That's where that mentorship and development comes in. And we don't ever get to see that once we're out. We don't see the behind the screens action of all these individuals, these guys that have had like legitimately really long careers in SOF. And in the case of Mr. Parker, like those guys have been around for how long?
Man, long time. Long time. I think Ed Parker was a sergeant major at one point. Same with Doc Maloney. He's been around since Vietnam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Mr. Nelson, I want to say he was another one who was a sergeant major. But
just thinking back at how many of those guys have developed, mentored, and coached guys that would become freaking company CSM, group commanders, regimental sergeant majors, like. They've been around for so damn long. What was it like going into that? Coming back now, you've already done. You got selected, went to a team, went to a combat deployment. Now you're an instructor. What was that progression like going back to that?
If I'm being completely honest, I would. It was almost scary, and the reason being is because now here I am. Now I would be what people would consider proven, right? Went to the Q course, became an 18 Bravo, graduated, went to a team, went to combat. But the in between there is that some of the training that you have in the Q course, sometimes you don't even touch it on certain deployments, depending on the type of deployment that you're on, right? And then then you go down to South and Central America, and then the same thing happens. Like some of the stuff that you touched on or that you use, the tactic that you use in Afghanistan, doesn't really translate to the jungles in Colombia and South and Central America or the troops that you're working with. So now that gets put away. Now you come back from those deployments like, boom, hey, you're going now to where you have to take everything you've learned and teach it. So it was pretty nerve-wracking, pretty scary. I had to open up a lot of books, had to do some extra, I guess you could say, instructor prep time, just because when I put myself as a product in front of all these, E7, E6s, E5s who've been to combat also. I mean, yeah, these are infantry, they come from different backgrounds, whether they're mortarmen, and now here it is, now they're coming to excel their career also. So you can't really get in front of them and just talk shit. You know what I mean? You could, like, like if I'm, I worked on heavy side, so teaching mortars to mortarmen, like I have to know my shit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And the Q course transition to the point where now, like, if you're wrong about something, students will raise their hand. Hey, I don't think that's right. So there's a little bit now more, at least when I was there as an instructor, boldness with these students, and I think it happened in every phase, but specifically in MOS. So for me, it was scary, and I really had to like really dive back in and really hone those skills from that I got from combat, from operating down in Central and South America, and really put it together so that I can give myself and my instruction as a good product to the students. So I almost went back to like baby steps. You know what I mean? Because laying in a mortar, it's different from, in Afghanistan, it's different from laying a mortar in the jungle. A lot of overhead, obstruction and stuff you got to watch out for. So I really had to go now and like really take all that experience and break it down into something that was a good product for the students. And then, not only did I have, the mouths of Ed Nelson and Ed Parker and Doc Maloney there, basically, they're checking my work, but it was, man, a lot of pressure. It was very scary to be on that side, but at the same time, it was very rewarding. I got firsthand experience with grooming the next generation of SF guys and kind of like being in that mentorship role, and I was that instructor where I would be there first thing in the morning at 5 p.m. to go on ruck marches and to do these team kind of I guess building exercises with the students, whether it was rucking, whether we were running, whether we were in the gym, whether we were taking our mortars and rucking, 2 miles and then laying them in. Like I was that instructor. I in my opinion, I like to think that I paved the way for the instructor-led physical training with the students. Because when I don't think when I got there, I don't think it was really happening.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't have that when I went through. It was you show up and you're getting thrashed with knowledge and then getting tested. Like, hey, here's especially light side, the very beginning. It's like digest this material, again, tested tomorrow. Like, and hey, the big test is in 2 days. You fail that, you're done. And it wasn't anything where it was in it. I think it was so much easier back in that time frame to just process, get guys, push as many guys through, get them through, and if they don't meet the standard with testing, get them out of the way. But you're not really teaching at that point. You're just trying to see who retains the knowledge. But and what you were describing, doing those drills, doing those exercises, that's how we trained Afghans. That's how we trained partner force, by taking them out and like, hey, we're going to actually like do some training, but we're going to do a little bit of PT with it. We're going to take our mortars, we're going to friggin' run, we're going to ruck, and then we're going to lay them in, actually put hands on. Because data and just absorbing data through PowerPoint, like, fuck, dude, like that's going to break the will of almost anybody. Absolutely. But and some people will pass it, and it's arguably, are you getting the best product? But when you take that approach of like, no, man, like get intimately acquainted with your tools, with your equipment, like put it on your back. How much does this motherfucker weigh? Like now when you're exhausted, go through setting it up. It's one thing to set up mortar system in the pits. It's a complete different thing to set up mortar system after you already humped for 3, 4, 5 miles, set it up and continue set it up. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. Repetition, memory. Now this is all coming into play. instead of this fear and anxiety panic of sitting in a classroom like learning. It's like, all right, now you got 30 minutes to go practice this and we're gonna test.
Yep,
Like,
yep. And interesting, I say it was scary and rewarding. I was there, and I'm pretty sure you heard about the whole SWIC revamp. And
yes,
yes, so
dude, let's go
I
into
was
that
there.
because that was a dark
I
moment.
was there during that time, and the SWIC commander at the time, and I was there for all that crap, the town halls and
Yeah.
it was
What was that? What time frame was that? 2013.
I would say that was between 2017 and like 2018. I want to say
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
a lot of that went down. But
yeah,
and what was interesting with that is, there was some MOS phases that had to like basically take a lot of the instruction out. So some of the course got condensed. I want to say it got condensed to like a year. In my opinion, I don't think you could produce, credible. You could create numbers, yeah, but I don't think you could produce credible, thought provoking Green Berets, in that time frame. You know what I mean? Especially when you reduce the standard, because there wasn't any more, 50-pound ruck marches, hey, go. And then if you fail, you're done. There wasn't any of that. You know what I mean? I think even at the time when I got there, I want to say they didn't even do a 12-mile road march or a PT test.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the instructors there complained and was like, hey, you can't effectively test a man if we don't have, physical kind of, I guess you could say, gates, to see if they even deserve to be there. Because anybody
they wrote that was the same time frame they wrote that letter, right?
Yes.
That got put out.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yes.
I remember that. And man,
Yes.
those instructors, and now that we're all completely out, we can absolutely 100% say, holy cheese and rice. You guys fucked up with this idea that you can't look. What made us resilient, what made us be able to get back up when everything is going wrong and keep pushing, were those times in the Q course where you're forced to dig deeper than you ever have and push through the pain, push through the grueling, arduous friggin' rucks, and being told like, hey, guess what? You're doing the STAR course again. Well, we already got selected. It doesn't matter. You're in language school. We're going to do it every weekend. We're going to continue doing it. Like, I remember if there was a 4-day weekend or a 3-day weekend, hey, guess what? You're going out tonight to do the STAR. And if you don't pass it, you're done. It's like, what? We're in language. It doesn't fucking matter. Every day is selection. You're welcome.
And
then,
the everyday, when I went through selection and the Q course, one of the things that I always remember the cadre saying was that you are always being assessed.
Yes.
Well, that mentality during my time at SWIC as an instructor was effectively taken out. Instructors had no power to make on-the-spot assessments, right, with students that they thought were, the guy may be book smart, but when he's showing up, he's late, out of uniform, sloppy, can't complete a run. We had no power to make that on the spot assessment. Like, hey man, like maybe this guy shouldn't be here. I'm gonna, write him a counseling statement and then, and start a packet on him and effectively go before board and say, hey, this guy doesn't need to be here. It was almost as if that complete power was taken from us. And our only job was to push numbers out. That was our only job.
Yeah, dude.
So
that was crazy.
So, as a senior E7 now, who knew that I had to go back to the force, right? And I'll be on a team with those guys that were there who I felt shouldn't be there. I knew that, man, this is not only detrimental for the regiment, but also for the safety of the ODAs, like to give somebody a product. And then it was as if, I guess the mindset that command and everyone had was the team sergeants or the teams will get those guys up to speed. And
they said that it got published. It's up to the team sergeant to make the final product work.
And
that was insane.
Blows my mind. And I remember when I showed up to a team, I mean, I think I was deployed. We did PMT, and we were on a bird, gone. Had about 3 weeks to leave, and we were gone. So like even, and I mean, I'm glad I went to the Q course and got the training that I did, because effectively now I hit the ground like, oh, hey, brand new Bravos at the Q course. You guys are running all the ranges. And can you imagine me telling my team sergeant, I don't know how to do that. We didn't go over that. Man, I would have been off that team, quicker than anything.
Heartbeat.
But that,
Yeah.
as an instructor, that was kind of what we were, sending out the door to go to the guys who were or to go to the force. Was like this unfinished product. Like, yeah, we met the numbers, but it the not only was the mindset not there, but like the ability for some of these guys weren't there. I'll never forget, man, particularly there was a student, man, who I don't think he ever finished a single run that I led them on, ever. He was always dead last. On every ruck and every run, he was dead last. And I don't mean by like, there's such a stellar class that the guys, he's just the one.
Yeah.
I mean, 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. Or 20 minutes behind everybody else. Like everyone's already done the shower and he's just getting in. And, this guy graduated and made it to 7th group.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And there was some stuff that we tried to do to prevent that. When he got out to Robin Sage, I think the Robin Sage cadre kind of like, took a, hey, whoa, this guy isn't hacking it. This guy shouldn't be here. But I think even there,
that's so far.
Yeah, he's already. I mean, at this point now, it's like they're already invested all this money, all this time. He's already at Robin Sage. So you could see where the trouble comes now when those guys now reach back to the committee, like, hey, do you have anything on this guy? Like, he's not performing. He's crap. Like, we're trying to get him out of here. Now, I don't even think their efforts to effectively stop that guy, from graduating was even possible. You know what I mean? But that was a person that I recognized, like, shouldn't even be here. Like, whoa, how'd you get here? How'd you get past all these people? And I want to say he was one of those that reclassed from another MOS. They sent me a Bravo. But the issue that I saw with this particular student was just he didn't really give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had that real, I already made it, kind of attitude. I'm selected. I'm good. And he didn't have that understanding that every day you're being assessed.
And that's something that ultimately, that is something that we had that made a difference. And it was echoed throughout every phase, every instructor you came across. And not in a way like, look, I think I was a product of a very good, excellent ran, very difficult selection and qualification course process. And it gave me the understanding that I was going to join a regiment of individuals that were hardened, that were disciplined, and that they would do anything to accomplish the mission. Come hell or high water, the mission would get accomplished. What I saw in that time frame, and what all of us saw, and were just, and we did see it. We saw some of the end products come through. And I don't want to bash individuals. I don't want to. It's not like doxing, putting names out there. But you saw the shift in some individuals that showed up. I had a guy that couldn't tell me anything about the regiment, couldn't tell me anything about what it meant to be Green Beret. It was just a guy, I just wanted to get out of the conventional army. And it's like, man, you didn't do this because you had a higher calling or wanting to do something of greater service. You're just kind of tired of where you were at. And those people would usually have been weeded out. But for some reason, there was this great need to push the numbers. And when you prioritize numbers instead of quality, you get the wrong people. And we've all seen that. We've all seen it. And it's heartbreaking because within that, there's still some good guys. You know them. I've known, we've served with them. But that still doesn't address the fact that some individuals just get there and they're just like, whatever. They're just exactly that. Whatever people. Yeah, whatever.
Yep.
And that's not what you want in a firefight. No, that's not what you want.
Absolutely not.
To answer the call.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Dude, how did you, I mean, it's, you can't rattle the cages. You can't say anything. And we saw the suppression of voice. We saw the suppression of individuals that spoke out against it. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a letter that got written out.
Suppression is the easy way to put it. That's the easy way to put it. That's the easy way to put it. I mean, we had town halls and we were threatened. You know, I even remember I can't think of who the commander was at the time, but him like ripping his top blouse off and what, you want to fight me? You know, and like threatening to fight us. And I mean, this is a town hall full of, you know, senior enlisted people and civilians also, all part of the SWIC enterprise, man. And we're there on brag in this, you know, I guess you could say no electronics meeting, this secret, no foreign meeting, you know, getting threatened, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa,
yeah.
Like what's going on here? You know what I mean?
Fuck it. His name is Sontag. And what he did, what he did to that time period was absolutely devastating to the regiment. It was, because now you're putting the ownership and more stress on the individuals on the team to make that product work, to make that individual fit. And then if they don't, then they're out of a person, they're out of the resource, they're out of all that training, all that money just goes washed out. And what he did during those years and during his time at the helm was just catastrophic. But it's not the first time. It's not the first time we've seen revampings and shifting. I mean, it's a living, breathing organism. The Q course is constantly changing, constantly adapting. And what happened during those years, man, I think we saw a lot of it. I mean, when you came back to the teams, I'm sure you saw it, and we all saw it.
Absolutely. I saw some students too that they knew that I knew that they shouldn't fucking be here. They knew that I knew. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Getting back to, you know, the operational force after SWIC, you know, was bittersweet. Like I was excited. I was happy. I was like, hell yeah, I get to take all this wealth of knowledge now that I learned, and I'm gonna be the top Bravo man in the company, man. Like mortars, I got you. Plotting board, I got you. LHMBC, yeah, I got you. ATAC, come on. You know, and but then the reality when I got there, I don't know, man. It just seemed like everything had changed and had shifted. I think right around this time too, when I got back to group, I want to say that they changed the deployment ratio. You know, I didn't know that we were on such an extended deployment or ratio now. I didn't know. At least when I showed up, we had either a 1-to-1 or even sometimes a less than 1-to-1, you know, ratio. And then now it was, I forgot what it was, but it was like, you know, some teams hadn't gone out the door in like a year. And I was like, man, you guys sit in the team room for a year? What do we do? What do you do? Like what? I mean, shit, you sit in the team room for a whole year. Like, my God, you know, and coming back from after sitting for almost 3 years at SWIC, you know, I wasn't prepared for that. So it was it was good to be back and good to, you know, to be that senior guy now on a team that everyone kind of like looks up to. But you know, the deployments weren't really there. You know, we were just kind of sitting around.
You left. Yeah, you left at the absolute like peak of pushing and rotating constantly. And then and I know exactly when you came back because we have the privilege of being in the same company. Yep. And we were gearing up for the 2019-2020?
I think some of the company were already deployed because I was on 7131 on Josh's team. And if I remember correctly, they had just got back from, or either they were at Mexico or just getting back from Mexico.
Yeah. And we were gone to Afghanistan, and now with, you know, the jumping timelines coming back in the future, now it's such a heavy focus on the FID and JRTC. So the deployment ratios are back to like, I remember when we were downstairs and just plotting for the next series of missions, it was consistently, and some guys were getting like 30 days and rotating back. And to them, we're like, oh my God, I can't fathom this. I'm like, can't fathom this. You'd have been back here like at the peak of it, man. Like this is it's not Afghanistan, so they're thinking like, oh my god, like we can't keep this up. Like no, dude, this has been the normal. You just it's the wave. It's coming back now. It's just come in, high five, train, and go right back out the door. But you left and you're expecting to come back to that same op tempo.
I was, man, and I was excited to. I was getting tired of my family. Been sitting at home for 3 years, and I had that itch. I was like, man, I want to get out there and put all my knowledge and experience back out there to the fighting force. I'm excited, and then it didn't happen. Just got back, and I think 3-1 had like maybe 45 days in Mexico, and then that was kind of it. But what COVID did happen, so we did have that kind of going against us. But I mean, the op tempo definitely slowed down, and I mean it was really kind of heartbreaking. You know what I mean? Like I understood the why, but in the grand scheme of things, man, it was like it just how can you effectively use your ODAs? You know what I mean? If they're just sitting and training, at what point do they apply, the training? You can say, oh, a validation exercise. Yeah, okay, well, that's all canned scenarios, you know what I mean? Where, other people control. But how do we, effectively, I guess, measure, our training in a real world environment if we're not doing that?
Yeah, the deployment op tempo is a crazy beast, right? Because I call ourselves the end users, the guy on the team. Like we just want to deploy, we want to go to combat. What we're not seeing is the long playbook. Who's stratted for what? What other groups are going to be templated for that year? Like we get left out of. We're not seeing the big picture of who's coming in the theater, who's going to be holding the area down, and what our responsibilities are at. And that was kind of seeing that frustration as a warrant officer on the team when looking at the guys. Is like, guys, dude, like we can't control this. Like what we got used to was that op tempo, and even guys that weren't there, they just got used to seeing it. They got used to hearing about it, and they wanted it. They wanted oh man, you guys are going to be training for like 6 months, and you'll be gone for 6 to 7, come back and repeat it. And saying the reality is like, man, time changes, things move. And like they knew, like maybe they didn't know how the withdrawal was going to happen, but they knew, and they started throttling back, and they started pushing deployment timelines and dates. And it's kind of like when you're older and on the team for a while, you understand like, okay, like things are winding down. We are going to, and we started feeling that shift in like 2013, 2014. We started thinking like, things are going to slow down a bit. And sure as shit, after 2015, things started slowing down. And it's like, then we had all sorts of rumor mills. And like, I remember my senior way back in the day used to give me shit and pick on me. He's like, oh man, next time you deploy, you're going to be breaking things down. You ain't going to be doing nothing, Sarge. You're going to just be packing up Conticos, man. They're going to deploy 7th group down there just to pick up things and put it away. And I'm like, really? That can happen? It was like, bro, we're throttling down. In 2015, they were saying that. And we still got it. We still went on some good trips, but the op tempo definitely slowed down. What we're seeing now, as we were leaving, we started seeing the activity pick up on the FID, on the J sets, getting guys back into the AOR and like consistent rotations. And that's what some of the newer guys were like, wait, what, no combat? And it's like, dude, you missed the boat, man. Random country.
You missed the boat.
We can't just invade a country on our own, dude. We gotta wait for shit to pop up.
But I thought that dynamic shift too, man, was pretty interesting because we had some guys who came over and I don't know if they just didn't do their homework or really understood, SF's mission, especially 7th group's, area of operation. But they like no combat. I'm like, you missed that ship sailed, homie. Like you missed that. You know what I mean? Like now you gotta train to go down and link up with Cole Mill, and or go to Panama.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, that's the beauty of it though. Like being and it's funny as a Panamanian and a Colombian, we've been able to go back to our home countries, sort of like invaders, if you
Yeah.
will. It's such a crazy idea that, after growing up and going through our own journeys, being able to go back to the areas that, that's even though I'm an American, I am a red-blooded, proud American. My DNA, my lineage, my birth nation, it's still there. And I got to go back there, and like, I don't have any ties to it, but it is kind of a crazy
Yeah.
feeling to go back and be like,
For
holy
for
shit.
for me, that was kind of like one of the most proudest moments of my SF career was to go, back to Colombia, to train, in a sense, like my fellow countrymen, as an
Yeah.
American wearing an American flag, and those guys there, when they saw me, like, it was like, oh, like, because they don't get paid, a salary wage. They don't get paid.
Yeah, dude.
These are like lower on the scrotum pole, as I like to call it. Your average, soldado professional, man, who's,
Yeah, man.
and for them seeing me and, still embracing me as like a paisano, and still like,
No.
they're proud of me. It was one of the proudest moments, man, of my SF career, was going down, deploying to Colombia,
No.
yeah.
Dude, Colombia is a great deployment. We dog on it all the time, but it's one of our longest enduring partnerships in the region, and it is a great place to actually work with individuals that will learn and want you there. Like, a lot of times you go to places and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do your training. They're like, bro, like, making and forging friends, because you have rotations that go back to back. Like, that's one of the things I really truly loved about some of my deployments, were the ones where you're able to go right back, and you already have the relationship established. You already have the friendships. You already have the guys at the ramp cell phones programmed. You already have the dudes at the partner force ready to reach back out. Like, that's the beauty of SF that we need to, hope, or if you're in a place where you can mentor and coach to next generation, help them understand that that's something to strive for. That's something to be excited about. Yeah, it's not Call of Duty. Yeah, it's not the GWAT era, but fuck that. Your future is way more important than any of the things that we did. Like, the new shifting warfare, the new warfare that you're going to be a part of, is infinitely more interesting than what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq. I just watching what's going on in the news right now. Future Green Berets and our current Green Berets have a mission set that we can't even begin to imagine. Like, dude, we didn't have to worry about drones till the very end.
Man.
We didn't have to.
Yeah, look.
Now that's a common fucking thing, dude.
I'm telling you, man. As a retiree now, and I work in the intelligence sector, and Ukraine's all the hype, Iran's all the hype. But you look at some of these tactics, man, that these fighters are using. I mean, they'll take a mini drone that can, grab a grenade payload and just, build some apparatus or some contraption, you know what I mean, and launch it, on troops. And I'm like, man, the dynamic of the battlefield has changed,
Changed completely.
has changed. And one of the most recent incidents with drones causing U.S. lives, or taking U.S. lives, was the one in I believe it was in Jordan, if I remember correctly, Tower 22. But if you read the story on what happened, that I guess there was a disconnect with the radio frequency of a U.S. drone that was inbound to the base,
Yeah,
and an enemy drone. And I was just thinking, like, man, like, if that was a test to see if you can hide a drone under another drone's frequency, I definitely think that we will be able to see a new TTP or a new SOP developed by our adversaries to effectively do that. That was crazy. Sadly, it cost the lives of 3 Americans, but nonetheless, man, like, the drone technology now, and the drone technology we could see in the next 5 years, probably be pretty interesting, or definitely pretty interesting to see on the battlefield. And we didn't have to worry about that. We didn't.
no,
We did not.
no, we did not. We had the advantage, and we had the upper hand when it came to tech. And it felt, regardless of how you feel about it, it was that chip on the shoulder.
Yep.
Like, all right, cool. You want to hide? Fuck you. I got a switchblade,
Yep.
dog. We'll get this all day.
Yep.
Like, gee, okay, fuck. I got Overwatch, dog. I got overhead protection. Let's call it in. Now our guys are going into a complex environment where all that shit comes out of play. Like all of that. Like if you're serving in SOF and you're listening to this, be excited. Be a master of your craft. Hone it and own it and be excited for what the future lies. Don't be looking at the rear view mirror, man. Your team sergeant, your warrant officer, like, yeah, they got great stories, but you're going to be on the cutting edge of the next warfare. And that's where we need Green Berets. That's where we need our SOF professionals constantly being excited and being proficient in all of their skill sets. And it's like, yeah, door kicking's cool, but there's a lot of different shit that Green Berets are utilized for. Master all of it. Be excited for it. If I could go back and just echo that in the team room a little more, I wish I would, because it's fun to make fun and joke about, hey, you're never going to get that combat experience. But guess what? None of the combat experience that we went through will fucking matter in a matter of, back then. After withdrawal of Afghanistan, all that shit went out the window.
Yep.
Doesn't fucking matter anymore, dog. Done. Case closed.
It doesn't.
Next.
Doesn't. And then now
you're no longer relevant.
Now it's like, I think the focus for the younger SF guys should definitely focus on where technology is heading, and the implications that has, everything from, the AI blew up, last year. It took off, like look into that. UAVs, look into that. I bought a little small, hobby one just to fly and send it up in the sky and see how high it can get before I can't hear it anymore. And it can be up there about 50 feet and you can't hear it, on some of the small ones. And I'll just imagine, man, like I couldn't imagine this being, over, an ODA camp and no one knows and they're just pulling surveillance on you. You're talking, maybe a goat farmer out there, with his little thing, sending intelligence back. How do you defeat that? How do you effectively defeat that? How do you combat that? These are the things that these young SF guys, especially the newer generation, need to be thinking about, because you can't be in some of those sites when you're forward deployed, where somebody's using a hobby drone to pull some type of surveillance, get some type of pattern of life. And we don't have that advantage anymore. As you said, Danny, we just don't. You know what I mean? We just don't.
Yeah.
Enemy is more incapable of doing it themselves now also.
Absolutely. Man, when you were towards the end of your career, when you were finally coming into the understanding, like, it's time for me to move on, what was that journey like for you?
Ooh, that was a hurtful journey. I'm not gonna lie, it was it hurt a little bit. And it was because, I wasn't the young spring chicken on the team anymore. You know what I mean? Like I had these younger guys that were faster than me. You know what I mean? Could ruck faster. And they'll talk their shit. You know what I mean? So and I still had to try, but these old knees, you know what I mean? They can only go so far before you're like, yeah, I'm a pull up a squat here. And I consider myself young in age, but what a lot of people don't understand, don't know, is that I had doing a parachute demonstration. I actually had a parachuting accident, where I hit the ground pretty hard and broke, both feet and tore both ACLs. This was back when I was like at 13 years in, but I was still able to manage. I was a big barrel-chested freedom fighter, 260 pounds, rock solid, but got the weight down. I was still able to continue. So didn't push myself out of the Army right then and there, but I still kind of like held on to being on a team and being on, in the career and all that stuff. And then in Mexico, 2019, with rucking up one of those mountains, I was like, man, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't see how, I'm going to be able to, if we go back to Afghanistan, I don't see how I'm going to be able to do this. I don't see how. So that feeling right there from that time, that was hurtful, because then I knew that my identity, or I felt that my identity was in SF. And I was like, okay, now I have to be Raymond Steele. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
because Raymond is more than a Green Beret. He's more than that. So once I came to that realization that, man, I might not be able to do this forever. I'm gonna have to hang it up soon. I started to, plan how I was gonna do that. Because the last thing I wanted was to like fail an APFT or some shit like that. And some dickhead sergeant major was like, "Oh, you piece of shit. We're gonna get you out, we're gonna chapter you out because you failed but sergeant major, I've got
Yeah.
16 and a half years in, just let me ride out. That was the last thing I want, was to be put out on someone else's time. So I started to basically, started going back to school, trying to get some different skills, that I can use that make myself marketable, when I got out. But it was hurt, or I was hurt. I was afraid about what I was going to do, how I was going to provide, for my family. At the time, I was going through a
Yeah.
divorce, so I was like, man, how am I going to, go through the divorce, retire, and try to find enough money to take care of my son. Um, so transition for me was scary. I'm glad I had you as a leader, that allowed me that a little bit more time to try to like figure out what I want to do, and so I definitely appreciate that. But the transition journey, now that it's over for me, I would say that it's definitely a mission that should be a priority when you're getting ready to get
Yep.
out, and that you should have it, that it's possible to be successful if you do the work. And luckily for me, I started to do the work um, early on, like maybe probably a year before I officially got medically retired, and it benefited me. I was able to land a job, for a wonderful company, and transition right from losing 75% of my military pay right into a great paying job with a company in the private sector. But it was scary, man. I cried, you know, many nights, crying to God, like make a way, you know what I mean? Like submitted hundreds, if not thousands, of application and resumes, revamped hundreds of
Yeah.
resumes, you know what I mean, to make it more marketable, received hundreds, if not thousands, of denial letters, you know what I mean? But I still kind of like kept the faith, that it's doable, and I'm going to get the transition done. Um, but I do feel like there's not enough resources and not enough information that the Army provides to help people who
Yeah.
are transitioning, especially if you're medically retiring. If you're at 20 years, of course, you got Red Empire time, you got all that. But if you're medically retired, no one really gives a shit. No one really cares. You're kind of just, hey, figure it out on your own, pussy. You just
Yeah.
kind of, at least how I feel it goes. But there's just not enough resources. There is TAPS, but I mean, you did TAPS. I mean,
Yeah. Let's just get this out of the
you know,
way. TAPS is by far the single worst. I would rather sit to those automated like internet security friggin' CBT courses we got to
yep.
do every month than ever go back through. And it's a joke. It's a joke. And I took it serious. I took it serious, and I wanted to go do the online, do the in-person class. They only had seats available for 15 people. And I had to project it like 4 months out, and I got my seat. I got it secured and everything. The week of, the lady's like, "Hey, sorry, we had to cut back. But you can do the online portion." It's an online click based seminar thing, that doesn't do anything. It doesn't provide you any actual meaningful resources. It doesn't help you sit down and go through employment eligibility with any sort of like meaningful organization. It doesn't sit there and help you fill out a resume, and like it doesn't coach you. It doesn't give you resources or like, hey, here are some openings in the available area. It doesn't do a damn
Doesn't
bit.
do
You have to go
any
out
of
there.
that.
Yeah.
And I did the online portion, and similar to you, and it was straight ass.
Yeah.
But with seeing how limited those resources were, I started to do a lot of research, man.
Mhm.
research. I found organizations like Syracuse. They have something called Onward to Opportunity that will
Yep.
help get PMP certificates for veterans and active duty members. There's a lot of steps you have to do to qualify for them, but it's still something good. I found out about Voc Rehab. I think is what it was called. Now it's
Yep.
Veterans Education and Rehabilitation. Phenomenal program. Paid for my degree. For not great program. I also found out, I'm trying to about Hire Heroes and different
Yeah.
organizations that will help with resume writing. But a lot of that was what I had to take time out of my day to go and find out, and I did it
Mhm.
as a leader would, on an ODA, come up with your, my D time or my retirement time, R time, and backdate the milestones that I needed to hit to make sure that when I get on that date, on that retirement date, that I was good when I got out.
Yeah.
And after doing that, I had a smooth transition, but it wasn't through any of the resources or the help that the Army is supposed to have. It was through the hard work, and friends and networking, man. LinkedIn
Yep.
is worth its weight in gold for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Um, but and that was my transition. Now, ask me questions about the VA, we could go a whole another hour talking about that. But that was my transition,
I
Danny.
could too. VA. Wow. We'll do another show on
Yeah.
that. I've recently had some great appointments with the VA, and man, let me tell you, that's going to be a whole different segment. Uh, dude, I'm so glad to have been part of your journey, to have been able to be a positive voice, because that's ultimately what we need. And when we started working together, as you were going through your process, I had finally started gotten help with my issues, my health, but both physical and mental health. And I realized that part of being a healthy, emotionally intelligent individual is when you see others that need help, you give help, you assist them, you find ways to making their journey a little bit easier. And we don't see enough of that with our guys that are retiring medically from the military. In our soft organizations, we need to be able to look at those individuals and realize that they are a very short timeline, and they need our network, they need our brotherhood more than anybody, because in a few short months, that teammate, your brother, is going to be out on the outside. Give them the resources, empower them with the ability to go make those appointments, go get the help they need. Like, everybody thinks of it as, well, they're quitting the regiment. No, they're not. This individual could be fighting cancer. This individual could be fighting an autoimmune disease. They could be dealing with the mental health issues that you don't want to talk about or face yourself. When somebody decides to hang it up, it's not because they want to quit or give up on the organization. It's because they're willing to put their family and themselves first. And you should honor their sacrifice and honor their brotherhood by helping them be successful on the outside. Because when they get established and they're thriving on the outside, they're now a powerful advocate for you. So do everything you can to help your brothers and sisters as they're navigating this difficult journey. You don't know what people are fighting through. You don't know what health issues they have, and you don't know what brought them to the consideration of saying, hey, I'm going to medically retire because it's what's best for me and my family. Be a leader through and through, all the way through that journey. And I know it's hard and it's difficult, but be willing to do the right thing, because it makes a world of difference. If you have any questions about it, be willing to sit down with that person and ask them what they need. Don't alienate
Yeah.
them, which is what we see all the time.
And that
Be willing
and
to sit
you're
down.
you're you're right, Danny, man. And when it comes to that aspect, of the transition, man, like I didn't really experience it, thank God, but I did feel like that negative cloud of, oh, you
Yeah.
you pussy, you're quitting, you know what I mean? And I'm glad, I had someone like you to be like, Ray, transitioning is your mission. Go take care of your family. And I think if we remove that negative, mentality from, those who, medically retire, I think more leaders would definitely be willing to help for some odd reason. And I don't know why. It's like we want
Yeah.
these guys, like they take so much already. Like, no, go to the tires are flat and the run flats don't work and your knees don't work and you have to lay up in bed and you can't play with your kids. You're part of the regimen until then. That's when you retire, and it's just like, why should my family get get a quarter or even a smaller percentage of
Yeah.
me than what the Army got? You know what I mean? My family will have me for the rest of their life. The Army just had me for however long I was in or however long it took me to retire. But why should my son be reduced to only having 10%, a 10% father who's mentally, physically, and emotionally there? That doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I used to be one of those guys who think like, oh man, you quit. And then when I was in that position, I'm like, man, that is some very toxic way of freaking thinking. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know how many times like my son wants to go play and I'm like, let's go tomorrow because my back. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
and I just wish that negative, perception, for guys who medically retire would just be removed, man, and and leaders would do what they can to really understand the situation, understand the why, and help that guy out.
Absolutely. The it all boils down to the truth. We're humans. We're meant to break. What I went through, what you went through, it's something that unless people are willing to sit down and finally ask, what's wrong? What are you going through? And become a part of the issue and understand and be able to say, like, oh, yeah, you can't do this anymore. Yeah, understand completely. You need comprehensive medical. Like, look, I went through how many treatment centers, like, and how many discharge notes that are friggin' this thick and miles long. If that doesn't show you that there are considerable health issues, then nothing will. It's that dogma that's deeply rooted in the idea that, like, how dare you leave
Yeah.
when I'm still
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and like I said, I had some phenomenal guys, man. Jody, Casey, you of course,
Yeah.
man, who were really understanding of my situation, man, and who really looked out, and you guys helped, my transition, and I'm here now, because of that servant servant leadership, that you guys, projected towards me, man, and it's I'm glad, I really am, really am.
Yeah. Well, you're a hell of a teammate, a hell of a brother. And I know looking back, and I had him too, those moments of like, fuck, like, can I really survive? Can I really make it? And dude, you're thriving.
Yeah. Well,
There it is. All that work.
part of my why and I left Florida and moved up to Baltimore. That's another segment for a long time of the reason why. But I went through several instances of helping homeless people in the community
Yep.
here, and that's kind of like my why, man. It's helping people, helping the community, giving back, especially since I mean, we give to Ukraine, we give to everybody, you know what I mean? But there's
Yeah.
resources here, you know, the resources that are supposed to be here for United States citizens aren't getting to them. And there's such a big homeless problem, even among the elderly. You know what I mean? I went through a situation with my mom where even she became homeless, and I basically had to go and save my entire family. So I'm getting ready to start this foundation called Steel Hearts. Our sole job is going to be to help those who find themselves in these situations to where they're homeless, and then the resources that are supposed to be there to help them can't help them. That's what we'll step into it to assist them. I've got a remarkable success story I'll share with you a different time about a guy named Ed who was homeless, missing a leg, has a prosthetic, all the systems in place that's supposed to be there to help him can't help him, won't help him, or something along those lines. So my family and I, we adopted Ed and helped him to basically get in a home, and he's thriving now. So
Hell yeah.
But it wasn't due to any of the resources that are supposed to be there to help people and like him who need it. But
and that's why soft professionals such as yourself are powerful members of our communities wherever we go, because where there's a need, where there's a problem, we instantly want to get in there and help fix it. Because it's what we do. We're service oriented. And if something is not getting done, damn it, we want to be there and help. Ray, thank you so much for being here and continuing to be a remarkable human being, brother. I am proud to just be able to still rely on you and be able to talk with you every other day, man.
Absolutely.
And still keeping our Texas going,
Absolutely,
dude.
absolutely.
It's a privilege to continue being able to call you a brother, man. So take care, and I can't wait to friggin' see where this foundation goes. And to everybody listening, remember, friggin' connect, engage, empower each other. The team room is bigger on the outside. If you're a SOP professional getting ready to transition, ask for help. Be willing to reach out to organizations, and Ray and myself are living proof that you can make it on the outside. Until then, take care, guys. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.